everyone, and thanks for joining me today. I have a really exciting guest that I'm going to bring to you today. We've been talking about moving abroad and finance and what that looks like, particularly if you have to kind of create your plan for you and your family as it moves abroad, and what you need to think about in that process. So I want to introduce you to my guest today. My guest is Rho. Hi, Rho. How are you?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
Well, thank you. So, Ro, I want to tell people your story first, and then if you can give them some tips as to what this will look like, and we'll kind of start the discussion there. So, Ro, tell us your story.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rho Thomas. I am a lawyer turned money coach, and my story starts back in 2016 when I had my first child, and I was still practicing law at that time. My husband was a resident; he's a physician, and I wanted to take advantage of this part-time policy that my firm offered. So I'm working and I was like you mentioned high achieving, right? I
Mm-hmm.
was the epitome of high achieving. If like you tell me this is where the bar is, I'm going here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I had been in practice for that first 3 years of my career. And so I have my son and I wanted to slow down a little bit because I was realizing that the mom that I wanted to be didn't really fit with the way that I was practicing law, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my firm offered this policy where you could do a percentage. Are you familiar with the billable hour in
Yeah, oh yeah,
law?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So within the legal profession, with the billable hour requirement, my firm had a billable hour requirement of like 1,900 hours for the year. And they had this policy where you could do a percentage of that billable hour requirement for that same percentage of your salary. So I was thinking 75, 80%, like just take a little bit of the edge off where I could still be there. I could still support my clients, but I could have more time with my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what prompted my husband and I to look at our finances to see if we could make that work. And when I tell you we could not make that work, like we could not afford a pay cut. So we had over $678,000 of debt, the majority of which was student loans. And so it was like, okay, let's look at what's going on. We looked at like how much money we were bringing in, what our expenses were, what our debts were, all of that kind of stuff. And we found that we had like $100 or $150 a month left. And at this point, we were making six figures. We weren't quite in multiple six figures, but we were, deep in the six figures. And so you would think that we would have money. Like I just knew we were going to be able to do this policy, but it was not working out that way. And so that's what prompted me to learn more about personal finance. And I realized how important having control of your money is to having control of your life. Because I don't like being told that I can't do what I want to do. Like I like to do what I want to do. But because of the way we had been managing our money, I felt stuck in this situation that I didn't want to be in. And so I start learning about personal finance. I start looking at these different blogs, listening to podcasts. And the thing that I found, Cinnamon, that like really kind of kicked us into gear was there were people who were doing like regular, not that law isn't a regular job, but like the average American, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
making typical
Mm-hmm.
salaries, and they were doing better than we were. And
Mm.
the story that has always stuck with me was it was a couple who were teachers, like school teachers, and they decided that they wanted for one of them to be able to stay home once they started their family. And so they bought a house and they paid it off in 5 years on teacher salaries. And I'm looking like, okay, I'm a doctor or I'm a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer. My husband's a
Mm-hmm.
doctor. And, these teachers are doing better than we are. And so that's where I realized like it's not about how much you make, it's about how you manage that money that you make. And that got me started with learning about personal finance and then ultimately teaching personal finance like I do now.
I love that. So I wanted Ro to come on because again, a lot of the audience here interested in moving abroad, and there's a financial component to moving abroad, right? Other than, the whole physically moving you and your family, there's the immigration process, there's, this and that and healthcare and all of that. And if you don't have a plan, it can make things substantially difficult. Not to mention a lot is going on in the States right now, right? And so job security is an issue. So, Ro, can you talk about just with everything going on, how can someone even tackle their finances when they feel like their job may be at jeopardy?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect time to tackle your finances because, like I said, with my story, I felt like my options were limited because of the way we were managing our money. And so, if you feel like, there's a little uncertainty or something going on with your job, then let's look at where this money is going. Let's look at how much you're spending, where you're spending. Do you actually like the things that you're spending on? Because what I found is a lot of times we are spending a whole lot of money on stuff that we don't even care about, but it's because we're not paying attention, right? So, like, let's get a kind of lay of the land. Where are you spending? What are you spending on? Kind of analyze that and see, do I like this? Do I like what I'm spending on? Do I like the amount I'm spending? And if not, then you can make those changes. And as you make changes, then you free up cash flow, right? So, like, going back to my story, how we had $150 left at the end of the month because we were spending it all. Like, we were going out to eat, we were doing all this stuff. And so if we keep more of that money for ourselves, then you open up that cash flow and then you can direct that money to emergency savings or to paying down debt or whatever financial goals you might have.
Can you talk about what is some of the like high achiever mental roadblocks that you have to get rid of in order to kind of just really sit down and focus on finances?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, hands down, is this idea that you should just automatically be good with money. Like, oh, I'm just not good with money. Like, if you're a high achiever, you're used to being able to do things well, like doing all the things, and you've always been able to like go above and beyond. But the thing is, money is a skill just like anything else. And an example that I use often is like, if you didn't learn how to be a brain surgeon, nobody's expecting you to go and do a brain surgery, right? Same kind of thing with money. Like, if you haven't learned how to manage your money, why should you know how to manage it? So it's a skill you can learn. You just got to educate yourself. There are books available, there are podcasts, there are blogs. And I really liked the podcast and blogs specifically because it was regular people. Like, I could see this regular person who's just like me. Maybe they're in a different profession, right? But they are just like me and they are doing some different things. They're making some different choices with their money. So I think number one, believing that you should just know how to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, that you'll just never know how, that is a lie. It is a skill you can learn. The second one, and I think this might especially be true for your audience, is that I work hard, I deserve it mentality. Where it's like, oh, well, I work all these hours, I'm making this money, I deserve to buy this, I deserve to do that. The thing is, it's not about what you deserve, it's about what your finances can support, right? So it's wonderful if you think that you deserve to buy this thing or to do that thing. Can your finances support you buying this thing or doing that thing?
No, I love that. And so, for individuals who are interested in moving abroad, what is it, or some of the steps that you can see based on the clients that you work with, that they can start to implement today to get their finances together or their budget or their, put aside some money to make sure that the transition, if that's what they decide to do, won't be so aggressive?
Yeah, so I think it starts with gaining that awareness of what's happening with your finances now. So look back at your spending for the last 1 to 3 months. I tell my clients 1 to 3 months. Most people only do a month, and that's fine. You just need some data to work with because what happens is people are like, I want to plan my money better. I want to do better with money. And then they make a budget or they make a spending plan and they're just pulling money or pulling numbers out of thin air, right? Like, oh, I should be able to spend this much on groceries, or I should be able to spend that much without looking at the actual data. So once you get that awareness of where your money is going now, you can create a plan that's actually realistic because it's based on what your spending has been. And even if you decide you want to curb some of that spending, you want to cut down, you're able to do so in a realistic manner because you're starting with the actual spending that you've been doing, right? So we get that awareness of where your money is currently going, and then you create a plan for where you want it to go. So if you have a goal of moving abroad, we need to know, like, okay, how much is the moving expenses? How much is living expenses in the new country? How much is whatever different things, right? Like, we need to have an idea of what you're aiming for, because then when you're creating your plan of where you want your money to go now, you can move some of that money toward that goal, right? Saving for the moving expenses, saving for the new home, saving for whatever other expenses come up in that transition. But you've got to create a plan for where you want your money to go, because if you don't tell the money where to go, it's just going to go wherever, and it's going to slip through your fingers, right? That's what was happening with us. Whereas like we didn't have a plan. It was just like, oh, we want to go out to eat. Is there money in the account? Yep, let's go. Right? So creating that plan allows you to direct the money to where you want it to go. And you can then start building up a fund for you to move abroad.
No, I
I
love that.
think too, if you've got other things, like if you've got debt, for example, like credit card debt or things like that, that are kind of pulling on your income, maybe they are decreasing your cash flow. You might take care of that, right? You might direct some of that money towards things like paying down your debt, which is going to increase your cash flow, which then in turn gives you even more money to save. But it all starts with figuring out where the money is going first, and then creating an intentional plan for where you want it to go.
No, I love that. And two, like here's the thing. Let's just be real. You whether it's an emergency plan based on what's going on with this economy, whether it's moving abroad, right now people are going to have to sacrifice. Like you just sacrifice is just what you're going to need to do. And so finding out where your money is going is important. And you have to understand, I think the thing that made it so easy for me when I left was that I had lost everything in 2008 and I had to start all over again. So when it came to having to start all over again, that was pretty easy for me. So me to leave a country and start all over again wasn't difficult for me. So if you are in a situation where this is going to be a new territory, you're going to have to make some sacrifices, and you're going to need to cut back your spending, even if you have the ability to spend.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, and can I piggyback on that too?
Absolutely.
Because that's something that I talk to my people about all the time. It's not necessarily a sacrifice. It's choosing to do this over that, right? So it's, I could technically spend this much, and I'm going to spend this much, and I'm going to use this for the goals that I have. Right. So, like, yes, there is a measure of sacrifice involved, but it's an intentional choice that you're making. I have decided that moving abroad is more important to me than going out to eat as often as I do, or then buying this new bag, or going to this place, or whatever it is. I'm choosing, because in everything in life, but especially in money, there are trade offs involved. Every
Absolutely.
dollar that you use for this thing is a dollar you can't use for something else. And so it's about being intentional and choosing how you're going to use that dollar to make sure that it's going to the things that you actually care about, and it's not just slipping through your fingers going to something that you're just buying because you've always done it.
No, I love that. And so I think also for those who are moving abroad, I think people associate a lower cost of living abroad, which is true to a certain extent. But I think it also depends on, over here we talk about upskilling. You got to have a better skill than you had last year. Like we can't just be sitting here just not improving our skills. That's important. You have to make sure that the country you're moving to has the type of economy that will hire someone like you. We've talked about the various visas in regards to skilled labor and that type of thing. There's some other videos back. You can check that out. But in regards to like healthcare and those type of things, it's going to be cheaper, but you're still going to have more expenses because you are an immigrant. Okay. So it's going to be cheaper in some areas and it may be more expensive in others. But when you think about employment, if they allow you to work remotely and potentially in another country, two things, we've talked about this before, is you still have to understand currency. If you're moving, in my case, I moved to Europe, but majority of my clients are in the US. And so I get paid in USD, although I pay my bills in euros. Now, granted, bills aren't that expensive, so I'm not stressing about it. But those are the things you have to consider when you're doing this. And so let's talk about the emergency fund, because there's a lot of emergencies going on in America right now. So
Well,
how do people prepare for that?
before we get there, I
Sure.
want to talk on what you just said about up leveling your skills, because something that I find, especially with those of us who are high achievers, you went through school, all that. It's like you graduate school and you're like, "Ooh, I'm done with that. And it's like, no, we need to continue to invest in ourselves. And like, just because you have gotten that degree doesn't mean that you can't still learn something. And we are so willing to spend the money on the car, spend the money on the house, spend the money on the trip, spend the money on, whatever else. And we won't spend the money on ourselves. but we are our greatest asset. And so I 100% love that you said that you need to be up leveling your skills, even if it's something like reading a book. But there are so many programs available where you can learn all these different skills and you can shortcut the path. Like, we want to spend the time to save the money, but time is so finite. You can get more money, you can't get more time. So I say spend the money to shortcut the time to get to this skill that you want to have instead of bumbling through trying to figure it out on your own.
I love that. I love
So
that.
now, ask me the question again
Oh,
about the
so right.
emergency
So we're
fund.
talking about the emergency fund, the move abroad fund, whatever fund that is. Um, how can they do that and still feel like they are having a life?
Yeah, so I think again, it comes down to making that decision about what's important to you because we're going to make some cuts, but the key is not to cut the things that are actually important, but you need to know what those things are, right? So, for example, if travel is still important to you, that's fine, but how can we travel in a way that maybe it's not as expensive or as many trips as you typically do because you want to have some of that money for your travel abroad fund or for your emergency fund or whatever goal you have, right? It's looking at these things that are important, but making sure that as you are spending, you're still freeing up some of that money for yourself. So I think that you can have these goals, but still make room for the things that are important to you. And it still allows you to live a life that's enjoyable. I am not in the sit in your house and stare at the wall until you save up the fund camp. Like, that sounds miserable to me. I think it's possible and very much important to have that balance to where you're doing things that you enjoy and still achieving your goals. But the key is that it's things that you enjoy, because sometimes we're looking at what Sally and Billy and
That
whoever else are
part. Talk
doing,
about that
right?
part, because I heard you have it. You were telling me about a client who went on a vacation but had to sit inside, take a couple pictures on Instagram, and then but basically they had to sit inside because they spending money on a vacation they couldn't afford.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't a client, but yes,
Oh,
that
whoops.
happens so often, right? Where I think we're trying to portray this image on social media and we're going into debt because we see these people went to this place. So I want to go to this place too. Well, this person bought a house. I should be able to buy a house. Well, we make the same amount and they got that car. So I'm going to get this car. Stop worried about what other people are doing. Like, what other people are doing has no bearing on your life, and you have no idea how they're doing those things. So, like, going
Absolutely.
back to my career as an attorney, I remember one of the older Black partners talked to me about how when he was, I don't remember what year, but let's call it 5 years in, 6 years in, at some point, whenever trust funds kick in, that's what he saw, like some of his colleagues start buying these houses. And he's like, oh, well, we're, the same level and we're making the same amount. So I should be able to do that too. But it was talking with some of his colleagues where he realized that some of them had these trust funds that kicked in, once they turned 30 or whatever the age was. And so that I say that to say we don't know how people are doing the things they're doing. It could
Absolutely.
be that they have a trust fund or that they have parents helping them, or they could just be going into a bunch of debt. Or
That
maybe they
part.
saved up for it, right? Like, we don't know what it is, but we can't look at what we see on social media and use that as a guide for how we live our lives, because people show you what they want you to see on social media, but you don't know all the behind the scenes that's happening.
And that's a really important point. And guys, I'm always like, you need to not believe anybody on social media, including me. You should just assume everybody is lying, because the amount of people that will ask me a question based off of something stupid that they heard on social media, it doesn't even make any logical sense. And we really need to get in the sense in which we're critically thinking. Like, the lack of critical thinking is why we're in this foolishness in the first place. But do not look at social media and assume that either you need that life, you want that life, because now we got a deeper issue, right? Moving abroad is not going to save your problems. Okay. Going on a vacation is not going to save your problems. But one of the biggest, I would say, handcuffs is not feeling comfortable financially, whether you are in the US or you're outside of the US. And so what we're talking about with Rho today is just how to make that place feel more comfortable, so that you have more freedom to do whatever it is you want to do. So what are your thoughts on that, Ro?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole basis for me going on the money journey for myself and the things that I'm teaching my clients. One of the things I say at the end of my podcast is ultimately it's not about the money, it's about the freedom and flexibility the money
Mm-hmm.
affords,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like being in control of your money, having that emergency fund, having savings, having your debt paid off, having investments, all of that gives you options so that you can move abroad or you can, maybe you don't want to move fully, but maybe you decide that you're going to take 6 months and go live in Europe, or, you have those kinds of options when you have money. But if all of your money is going out to Amazon and Target and the restaurants and the vacations and whatever else, then you don't have any of it for yourself and you don't have those options. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with those things. Like, I think you can buy the things that you want to, you can go out to eat, all of that. But going back to Cinnamon's point, you've got to think about what you truly want and
Right.
make sure that you're making those choices for you and not just because you're seeing somebody else do it. Because it could be that they're doing those things and going into a bunch of debt. You just have no idea. So make sure that you are making decisions that are important to you. So in my life, like, we don't live in the big, fancy house that a lot of our colleagues live in, but doing that allowed me to leave the practice of law to become a money coach. People thought I was crazy, but I don't have the same kind of bills that some of them have, right? So make sure that as you're making these choices for your life, it's things that you actually want, not things that other people want for you, not things that you think you should want because you have such and such profession or whatever else. All of that allows you to ultimately get to the things that you do want because you don't have all this money tied up in stuff that you don't care about.
No, I love that. I love that. So I hope that this was helpful for someone, that you've gotten some actionable steps that you can at least kind of monitor where your money is going first, and then decide what are the next steps to get you, whether it's an emergency fund, whether it's moving abroad or what have you. Like, just really see where things are going, whether it's subscriptions, whether it's fast food, whether it's Uber Eats, whether it's DoorDash, whatever those things are. You really have to see it in black and white and understand, and take the apps off your phone. Like, start to really do the things to kind of help you go forward.
To that point, Cinnamon, about taking the apps off your phone, like, one of the things that I tell my clients all the time is take your payment information out of the apps and stuff, right? Because it makes it so easy to buy. And a lot of times we do it and we're not even thinking about it. But if the payment information isn't in there and you got to stop and go get your wallet, go get your card, put the information in there, that gives you that little pause to think about, do I actually want this? Like, do I really want to spend this money right now? Because the companies put that in there. They say it's for your convenience. It is not. It's to reduce friction so that you spend more money with them, right? Like, if all I got to do is press a button, I'm going to spend a whole lot more than if I got to go and find my credit card and put the information in. So, like, take that payment information out. If impulse shopping or impulse spending is something that you have, like, that you struggle with, take the payment information out, and that really helps. And then another tip is, like, with Amazon or, your
Especially
favorite
Amazon.
online store or whatever, take a second and, like, put the whatever it is in your cart, but wait to purchase it, right? And maybe you create a day. Like, I tell my clients, have a day that you go in and you look through whatever purchases you put in your online cart, because a lot of times people just like to put the stuff in there, but then when they actually go back to it, it's like, why was I putting that in there? This is stupid. Let me delete this. And so you can save some money that way as well. It's like giving yourself that time to think about, do I actually want this thing? Or is it just like, oh, this looks great, click the button and buy. Take that or put some friction in there, right? Take that impulse out so that you can really think about if you want these things.
No, I love that. And the way that these businesses are going, listen, if they don't support you, I don't know why you supporting them.
That
So
part.
I'm saying nothing. So if you need to take Amazon's stuff off of your phone, take it off, take all that information off so that you can figure out what you want to do right now. We're at a point where we have to focus on our family and the well-being of our family, and where our money goes strategically. Okay. And so, yeah, if you need to take some apps off and take some credit card information out, then do that.
Exactly.
Ro, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Your insight was very helpful. If anyone wanted to contact you or reach out to you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, find me on my website. It's rhothomas.com, and Rho is spelled RHO. And I'm also most active on LinkedIn. You can find me there, also Rho Thomas.
Awesome. So you know the deal, folks. It was great chatting, and until next time.